the plane's horizontal stabilizer must be angled, putting downward force on the tail and lifting the nose. The investigators examined the wreckage, looking for anything that might reveal if the plane was not properly configured for takeoff.
Well, looks like flaps were set at 20.
On your way down the runway, if your flaps and slats aren't set properly, you may get too much drag. It's a sweet spot of those settings, and they have to be in that region. If they are beyond that region, they will not do what you want. In fact, they'll do things you don't want.
The flaps on the wings seem to be correctly extended for takeoff. On the tail, the horizontal stabilizer also appears to be properly deflected.
It looks fine.
Everything appeared to be normal in terms of the lift.
Investigators find nothing to suggest the engines weren't providing enough thrust to get the plane off the ground.
You would look at the settings of the engines, the quality of the jet fuel, and those are the things you would look at first, and they did look at them first.
Confirmation of the engine performance can only come from the plane's flight data recorder. It's one of two black boxes that record every detail of the flight. They may hold the key to understanding exactly what happened, but they've been submerged in the Volga River. Before they can be analyzed, they must be slowly and carefully dried out.
Okay. Take them to Moscow immediately.
Why the pilots of Flight 9633 could not lift off the runway remains a mystery. There's a second, equally puzzling question. Why didn't they abort the takeoff at the first hint of trouble?
The question then is, what decisions should the crew have made? When would they have known enough to choose to abort the takeoff?
Meanwhile, a day after one of his nation's worst tragedies, Russian President Dmitry Medvedev visits the crash site.
It was high profile because obviously very famous club, and any loss of life is tragic, in aviation especially. And as I mentioned before, hockey is a main sport in Russia, if you will. And if you talk to Russian people, they would tell you, we lost part of a family.
2011 has been a dismal year for Russian aviation. The Yaroslavl accident is the 8th fatal crash so far. Less than 3 months earlier, 47 people died near an airport 650 kilometers north of Moscow. Rusair Flight 9605 slammed into a highway while coming in for a landing late at night. The Yaroslavl disaster has drawn critical attention from around the world. President Medvedev announces that radical changes are needed in Russian aviation.
The pressure on a team to investigate this and find the correct answer to it is always high, but when the president of the country comes out and says you're going to have to do it right because the country needs an answer, I'm sure they felt the whole weight of their whole country and of the families of all the victims looming over them.
We need to work faster.
Investigators desperately need to know what happened during the final moments of Flight 9633. They catch a break when they learn that an airport security camera off the end of the runway recorded the Yak-42 as it finally lifted off. The grainy image could provide a crucial lead.
Whoa. Can you play that again?
The video shows that the plane was properly configured for takeoff. But beyond that, it holds no new information, no clue to what went wrong.
Okay, they started here. They lifted off here.
The plane only needed 1,200 meters to get off the ground.
They had about 2,800 plus meters of runway available.
That's more than twice the distance they should need.
Something kept the plane on the ground when it should have lifted off. The persistent question for investigators is what? They think the plane might simply have been too heavy.
Aside from being harder to get in the air if you weigh more, and anything that weighs more is going to be harder to accelerate.
It's a lesson that was learned nearly 9 years earlier in Charlotte, North Carolina. All 21 people aboard a commuter plane died when it crashed and burst into flames less than a minute after takeoff. The plane was 263 kilograms above the allowed maximum. Weight was also considered a key factor in the US Army's deadliest peacetime crash. On Arrow Air Flight 1285, the weight of 248 soldiers equipped with heavy gear was underestimated. Their DC-8 fell from the sky 900 meters beyond the end of the runway in Gander, Newfoundland. Everyone on board was killed.
If the weight is underestimated or not calculated at all, you just don't have that clear picture of what exactly to expect from the airplane.
They didn't know their weight.
Concerns over the takeoff weight increase when investigators learned that Yak Service had no scales for weighing baggage at Yaroslavl's airport.
There was no way to weigh the gear, the luggage and the cargo that would be loaded in the airplane, so it was estimated.
But when investigators estimate the weight of the team and their baggage, they conclude that the plane was not too heavy.
The weight is under the limit.
Even with all the hockey gear, the plane was still safely under its maximum weight.
It does not appear that was a contributing issue in this case, but it shows that the crew was not properly preparing the information they would need during the takeoff roll.
If the problem wasn't weight, it may have been speed. Investigators returned to the engines. Using the plane's estimated weight, they determined that the speed needed for takeoff was 215 kilometers an hour.
Didn't they ever get to 215?
If the engines weren't working properly, it could explain the disaster.
It's very fortunate that the flight data recorders were both recovered and functional, and that isn't a universal factor in modern Russian aviation.
The speed question is resolved when investigators check the FDR data. They find that the engines had powered the plane well beyond takeoff speed.
Engines are working.
Investigators are baffled. They can find no reason for the failed takeoff.
And why didn't they lift off?
The airplane should fly. The airplane wants to fly. In fact, at 210 kilometers per hour, with the stabilizer set at 7 degrees, the Yak-42 will rotate on its own.
On September the 10th, 2011, Russian Prime Minister Vladimir Putin attends a memorial for the Lokomativ players, along with 40,000 grieving fans. 2 days later, Alexander Galimov, the last remaining member of one of Russia's best hockey teams, dies from his injuries. The Yaroslavl tragedy has now claimed 44 lives. With an entire nation mourning the loss of so many young athletes, the air crash investigation team is under intense pressure to deliver answers.
The Russian government was putting pressure on the investigators, trying to get results, to get to the truth, what exactly was happening.
Investigators scour the flight data recording, desperate for clues. Finally, they spot something unusual.
Look at the acceleration.
Despite full power from the engines, the Yak-42 did not accelerate as quickly as it should.
During the takeoff roll, when the aircraft should be continuously accelerating, it was actually slowing down toward the end of the roll. And slowing down is a bizarre, unusual, and potentially fatal development.
It could be the lead investigators have been hoping for. If they can explain the bizarre drop in acceleration, they may finally know what killed the celebrated team and the crew. Investigators can't figure out what could have caused Flight 9633 to lose speed at a critical moment.
Could the brakes be on? Crew taking cover.
It's a bizarre possibility, but having the brakes on might explain the plane's unusual behavior.
Something was braking the aircraft at a time when everything else was trying to speed it up.
To confirm their theory, investigators conduct a test at the Gromov Flight Research Institute near Moscow.
The length of the runway at Gromov is probably around 5,000 meters or so. It's very long. It is suited for test flying.
A test pilot will recreate the flight exactly using data from the FDR. First, they try the flight with no brakes applied.
We have rotation speed.
The test plane lifts off easily just 1,200 meters down the runway. Then they try the flight again.
This time puts the brake on.
They gradually applied the wheel brakes to slow the aircraft down as you're attempting to take off.
With the brakes on, the plane still has enough power to take off. But the distance needed to reach takeoff speed more than doubles.
What the flight test indicated was that the 4 sets of brakes in the landing gear were activated and were actively slowing down the aircraft as it's rolling down the runway.
The test flight evidence is compelling. It now seems almost certain that the Yak-42 powered down the runway with its brakes on.
Rotate.
The puzzling question is why?
A bizarre situation, and explaining it was a real challenge.
Investigators listen to the cockpit voice recording from Flight 9633.
Okay, go ahead.
They hope the crew's conversation can help explain how and why the plane's brakes were activated during takeoff.
Brakes. Check on the left, functioning. Check on the left, functioning.
They hear the crew check the brakes before takeoff.
The brake test was fine.
It appears that the crew had no concerns about their brakes at the start of the flight. Investigators now wonder if the braking system malfunctioned and activated the brakes in error after the plane began to move.
From the media coverage, we know that there were problems with braking system. There is definitely a possibility.
Digging into the history of brake malfunction on the Yak-42, the investigative team makes a disturbing find. There have been at least 5 previous incidents involving faulty brakes.
But things went really, really south after the collapse of the Soviet Union, and a lot of safety measures and normal training and talented people all went by the wayside.
To better understand what went wrong with the brakes, investigators send the wheel assemblies out for testing. While they wait for results, they shift their focus to another unanswered question.
Why did they keep trying to get in the air long after, in hindsight, it was clear they should not have?
Perhaps the cockpit recording will explain the crew's decision to continue their troubled takeoff.
Full power.
Investigators listen for the captain to announce their abort speed, also known as V1.
Once the airplane approaches a V1 speed, the captain of the aircraft needs to make a decision to either continue takeoff or abort takeoff.
But as they approach the critical speed,
Crew are taking off. V1 is 190.
the recording reveals a disturbing exchange.
We need 200 for V1.
No, VR is 200.
We hear the captain announcing 190 kilometers per hour as a V1 speed, and he's corrected by the flight engineer.
No aircrew should be debating critical speeds during a takeoff run.
They didn't know their abort speed.
The abort speed should have been determined before the plane even started to move.
Okay, let me hear the briefing.
The departure briefing is a very important part of the flight. It is done and conducted by the captain. It has to be recorded on a cockpit voice recorder.
Departure procedure, runway, heading 300. Transitional altitude is 700 meters.
A captain typically informs his crew of the proper abort speed in a briefing before takeoff.
Prior to reaching a speed of, we will reject the takeoff.
When he comes down to the V1 speed, it's impossible to distinguish what exactly he's saying.
Investigators suspect the crew did not hear a V1 speed either.